Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to Entrepreneurial Resilience, how to prepare for the unexpected. Also, happy Small Business Month. My name is Colin Mahan, and I'm a program director at the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the Nasdaq Center is a nonprofit that's building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. As you're going to see in the chat in just a moment, the NASDAQ Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So check out those links and resources in the chat. Now, a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Firstly, let us know where you're dialing in from in the chat. See if you got a neighbor. Secondly, we're going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event, so please submit those questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. We'll try our best to get to them all. Now, none of what we do here at the center would be possible without all the amazing support from our sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, BMO, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, BPM, and HubSpot for Startups. We're humbled by their contributions and hope you're grateful too. Before we get started, I'm going to launch a few polls to take a step back and take a temperature gauge on how everyone's doing today. So the first one, how are you feeling about your business? We use this information to guide the wellness and programs that we provide for our entrepreneurs. So are you optimistic, little anxious, feeling survival mode? Let us know. Thanks for voting. I'm going to keep this open. Also, we've got Chicago. Welcome. San Francisco. Hey, Carla. All righty. Let's end this poll and share those results. Looks like optimism is in the lead, but there's a little bit of survival mode and anxiety out here. Hopefully, our presentation today will alleviate some of those sentiments. Now, the second poll I'm going to launch, what's keeping you up at night, helps guide the goalpost of what we're going to target on programming for the upcoming months. So let us know, and thank you for participating. All right, looks like finance is kind of in the lead. Good mix. Okay. I'm going to let this go for another second. All right, I'm going to end this poll, share those results. Looks like finance is in the lead, followed by a good mix of sales, marketing, scale, and team. So we will take note and chase after those topics. And so without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our special guest host, Denise Pachuca, the Senior Regional Manager at Zero Barriers to Business at BMO. Denise, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Colin. It's my pleasure joining this call today. And Colin, as you mentioned, I am a senior regional manager for BMO Bank, which is in 32 states currently. Our goal and what I do in my role, I work with a specialty group of team members specifically to bring access to capital, financial resources, as well as helping them make connections within their community to organizations that are bringing services specifically to help entrepreneurs. Today, I'm so excited about this event because we're going to have an opportunity, especially, I don't know how many of you guys knew, that last week was National Small Business Week. But here at BMO, we try to make it about businesses 365 days a year, not just 1 week. So I'm so excited about this event because we're actually going to have a expert be able to share like what are some of the things that businesses should think about more with respect to when they're thinking about thriving and just how to be better prepared for the unexpected. In today's session, we're going to focus a lot on resiliency and just providing information overall to help better equip the entrepreneurs that are able to hear this information, and again, how to just be better prepared for things that might come up that sometimes as an entrepreneur you might not be ready for, from natural disasters to things even like the pandemic, things that are out of your control, to maybe even some of the things that you can control, like just how do you interact in the community, like protecting yourself against cybersecurity and so many other things. You might be a sole proprietor sometimes and operating on your own, or sometimes you might be working from home, might actually even have a commercial space that you're using. So we want to make sure that you're prepared regardless of how you're running your business. One thing for certain is that again, regardless of what size of industry or where you're at, there are things as a business owner that you can do to just be better prepared for things that might come up that you just are are completely out of your control. Um, I know it sounds ominous, but luckily we're joined here with Andrea, who's our guest speaker, and she's going to be able to share a lot of things with you guys. It is my pleasure today to welcome Andrea, founder and CEO of the Resiliency Initiative program, which is a program specifically that specializes in helping businesses and the communities become self-reliant through crisis. Prior to funding the Resiliency Initiative, Andrea was a senior leading global emergency management and business continuity at Walmart. And before that, she was the director of global crisis management and business continuity at Walt Disney. Sorry, I had to make sure I didn't miss any of that up. Amazing, amazing things Andrea has done. Um, Andrea has had leadership roles in emergency management with the American Red Cross, FEMA, and the Federal Reserve. So a lot of insight to be shared with all of you today. Without further ado, I would like to have Andrea join us and start sharing more about herself and how she's here and her presentation.
Thank you so much, Denise. I really appreciate that intro. And hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining wherever you are today and whatever time it is. I have a special place in my heart for emergency preparedness because I've seen firsthand how it can help a business and a community if you spend a little time thinking through a potential bad day. And Denise, thank you for that kind intro. And so long before I was head of emergency management for Walmart and head of crisis management for Disney, I spent about half of my career in public service with FEMA doing Hurricane Katrina recovery work down in New Orleans and with the Federal Reserve. But I started my career in 1999. And I don't know the age ranges of who are joining us today, but some of you may remember that in 1999, the world was ending. There was this thing called Y2K, and people were prepping before prepping became a word. And what was the big concern? We were very concerned with the new millennia that computers wouldn't understand the number 2. So thinking of that at such a micro level, that could take down our entire existence really got me like kind of fascinated. And I did not get into this field like this was a career path. I actually dropped out of law school and I was looking for a job. And I saw an old school classified ad and this was the city and county of San Francisco at the time. And they were looking for someone to help nonprofits and small businesses plan for potential world-ending Y2K. I thought this was super fascinating. Like I just didn't really even ever think about that on even a personal level. And I was living in San Francisco and in the Bay Area, it's very prone. When you think San Francisco, when you think kind of disasters, you think earthquakes. And I myself was like, okay, I kind of know, like I get under something, I'll hold on. But past that, I hadn't really thought about, well, what if there had been damage to my home? I was physically in Oakland and worked kind of the whole Bay Area. What if I was in San Francisco and my son, a third grader, he was in Oakland, I was in San Francisco and big earthquake happened. How was I going to get back to him? And so when I was kind of researching, for this job, I was like, wow, this is fascinating. What a fascinating opportunity to help people think this through. And especially from the standpoint of it just makes good business sense. And now fast forward in time where I'm a small business owner myself, and think when I went to develop my business plan of how I'm going to start the small business, the major component of it was how was I going to stay in business if something disrupted my operations? And that's really what I want you to take away from today. No matter where you are in your business, how small or big your business is, it doesn't matter. You don't need to invest a ton of time and energy into thinking through all the multitude of hazards that can impact you. What you need to spend time is thinking through those strategies on how you could quickly pivot and take care of yourself and your people. So that's what I'm going to kind of share with you, kind of my lessons learned since 1999. Very thankful the world didn't end, but think of everything we have dealt with since, 1999, from September 11th, and then everything that happened during the pandemic and how that impacted the small business community. So I'm going to start with, kind of giving you that big, broad brush, emergency preparedness, and sharing with you like a small bit of effort can make such a huge, huge difference in your day-to-day, especially if something happens. And I want you to think about a crisis and what that means to you. A crisis could simply be your daycare provider closed that day and you have no place to take your kids and you can't get into the office. That's a crisis. That impacts your business, that impacts your family. Take it then up to you lose access to Zoom, your payroll system, or the really big bad day. Like I live in the Midwest. I'm 10 minutes from Oklahoma, and it's been every single day. The hurricane watches and warnings have been going off, and the impact that has psychologically, even if something doesn't happen. And to thinking through those just different strategies on what you would do saves so much on the back end. And I know it can definitely feel like, oh my gosh, this is stressful. I don't want to think about it. But think of your stress level if something does happen and you haven't thought it through. Think of your employees. Think of your children and your family. And so after we kind of talk about making these investments in preparedness, I want to just give you those simple ways to do it. And I'm in my presentation, which you guys will have access to. I'm giving just a myriad of resources, all free, that you can find. And I wanted to put it in kind of a comprehensive snapshot. So you can, just click on a link and go to that if you want a checklist to help you think through a hurricane response or what should you have as far as emergency supplies. And then we're gonna talk about assessing your risk. What does that mean? Like how do you know what your risks are? So I want to talk a little bit about that and think of just quick and easy ways to do that and give you some resources. Then writing your plan. I will argue, and some of you I'm sure know, like, oh, I think we have a plan as a company. It's that binder over there collecting dust. No one's ever opened it or practiced it. It's not a plan, right? You have a paperweight. So it's all about the process. And even if you don't have anything officially written down in like a structure, that's okay. As long as you thought it through and trained and executed with your employees, you've got a plan. And then let's talk about training and exercises, because it's great if you spend all this time thinking about your risk. And then even if you take the effort and write down a plan or fill in a template from FEMA, but if you don't share that with your employees, or if you're a one-person shop and you haven't shared that with your family, you don't have a plan because no one knows about it. All right. So we're going to take a little poll before we get into my presentation. So what I'd like you guys to do is rate your emergency preparedness. How are you feeling about it? Like, are you ready to go? Like, this is just like you're attending this because you just want to see if there's anything new. Like, you've got your go bag. Maybe you're in the middle ground. Maybe you've got some things done from emergency protocols, or you don't even know what preparedness is, and that's fine too. Just by attending today, you have set yourself apart and will help keep your business going if something were to impact you. All right, so let me see. I'm sure it's going to pop up. Take a few minutes to answer the poll. Because why are we here? And as the answers are coming in, I put up some news stories. These are some news stories that we have seen over the past year. And you'll notice they're different types of disasters. And remember how I said crisis and disaster can be defined by you as an individual. So these are some of these big ones, where we've got explosions. But also, what did I put on there? I put the writer and actors strike that happened. That had a huge impact in the industry. And anybody who was affiliated with the movie industry, so many are still out of work. And so that's a type of crisis that can impact you. And also, thinking through those, we woke up to news this morning. A major hospital network was impacted by a cyber hack. And think about that from your business. Again, small, big, it doesn't matter. If you woke up and you didn't have access to your emails, that would be a huge impact to your business. And sometimes you don't even know how long that impact's going to be. And I am sorry, I cannot actually see our poll results. So I'm going to keep going if that's so. Oh, here they are. Thank you. Sorry, I should have asked for them. Okay, so let's see how folks are feeling today. Okay, we got a couple. Bring it on, folks. Nice job. Those folks who are in the second two categories, like I said, you're here today, right? You want to learn, you want to change, and we're going to figure out, hey, if you don't know what preparedness means, we're going to figure that out, because a lot of times that's how you define it. What is going to make you feel like you can keep your business going in a time of crisis? So this is the different news articles I put up there, is just to kind of show you that cross section of what we're thinking about when we're talking about crisis and disaster, and how any one of these could impact you. So I wanted to give you about some statistics and some visuals to showcase my why. Why am I here today to share with you all, especially as another small business? Because I have seen the difference that can be made in having thought through emergency protocol and those who hadn't. Going back to when I started my career in '99, the city was super smart to have a role like me, to fund a role, because they knew if indeed this Y2K was going to take it out, the city needed help. The city couldn't support all of the individuals who were there if they were to lose power, lose access to transportation. So they needed the small business community and nonprofits to have their own plans in place so they could take care of themselves and any of their clients and customers, because that relieves the burden off of your first responders and your city. And so it was a great way to kind of show how symbiotic all of this is. So looking at this map, this is last year. This is last year, where there were, and it was shocking when I looked at this. If you look down at that bottom of that slide, 28 separate $1 billion, this is $1 billion, weather and climate change disasters. This is just weather and climate disasters. We're not talking about any of the cyber hacks that we saw, but and some on more on the man-made. This is what NOAA and our weather service, pulled into the data to showcase. And look at this. Look at this across the United States. And we're just looking at the US, right? We're not looking at a global scale. And you may say, hey, that's awesome. I'm in Nevada. We were cool. Like, I don't need to worry about it. But what did we learn from COVID? How interconnected we all are, especially from supply chain. So if you have the heartland being impacted like it was in 2023, and you have entities like Walmart, home based in Bentonville, Arkansas, and they're a major hub, the largest retailer in the world, and from a supply chain and transportation standpoint, they're impacted. They can't get their trucks out. Nothing's going into Nevada. And so thinking about this from the cost that this has from a nation and from our taxpayers and what FEMA can do and support you. And there were 28 over $1 billion, $1 billion disasters in 1 year. From thinking through from a sustainability, how difficult that is from a government standpoint, and why the investment is being really focused on is supporting that business community so they can help themselves after a crisis and be ready for this when it comes their way. And then let's talk about the impacts to the small business. Now, many of you, if you were in place before COVID, you know very well how this impacted you and how this felt. And maybe you were able to get some support with some of the loans that came out, but for many, they couldn't get it fast enough. And we saw so many businesses close their doors. And in fact, after a tornado or hurricane, some of our major disasters in the US, FEMA, the statistics that FEMA has is 40%. 40% of small businesses don't come back. They have to close their doors because they couldn't sustain that. They couldn't sustain a disaster impacting them. And what is even more shocking is that if it is one of the bigger ones that are impacting a specific community or a region, 2/3 within a year close their doors. 2/3. Small businesses make up 99% of the US economy. If you lose 2/3 of your small businesses in your community, you don't have a community. We saw these after prior to going to the private sector, I was with FEMA, their external affairs director for Hurricane Katrina work. I was based down in New Orleans, and it was year 5 when I started and I moved down there and was part of the recovery effort. At year 5, the populations of the city of New Orleans was still down by 40%. 40%. That's the loss, the economic loss that they had from people and businesses. One community, St. Bernard Parish, FEMA alone put $1 billion into bringing that community back. Because what does FEMA do? What does the funding go to? Schools, roads, sewer systems, not the small business community. There were 10,000 people left in St. Bernard Parish. $1 billion went into that community, but there was no investment into the small businesses because the people didn't come back. And so the ripple effect by, not one, investing in preparedness for small businesses on a grander scale is significant for all of our communities. And that's why I'm so passionate about this. Because long before, I had all these titles and started my business, my dad had a diner. And hi, Dad, I know you're listening. He had a diner in a small town way up north in California. And I started waiting tables when I was 10. And that it was kind of the community hub. Everybody came to my dad's restaurant. And if there was a snow day, we kind of lived out of town. And so sometimes there'd be snow. My dad couldn't make it into town. He locked the restaurant, right? He didn't open for business. He didn't make any money. That was just a regular snow day. And so the concept of taking like a big hit, we would have had to close our doors. If my dad still had his restaurant during COVID, there wouldn't have been a way for him to pivot to be able to even, start doing food delivery. Because when you're a small business, and I'm talking real small, like a micro business, I know the SBA defines small business as, 500 or less employees. But when you're talking about a mom and pop shop, or you're the only person, and not having the capacity to even think through how you would, if you just lost power, it does not have to be the big thing. You lose power for a day. You lose access to get in to your business. And so thinking about it from that loss perspective, and this is why I feel very strongly, any business plan needs to have your continuity of operations. How are you going to stay in business if something gets disrupted? The loss of power to the really big bad day. How are you going to stay in business? And think about some of these totals I have on here. And you as a business, how could you take, how would it feel if you lost $10,000? Some of you might be saying, we're okay. 10,000, let's notch that up. How about 25,000? How about 100,000? Could you withstand that? What is it from, and how could you withstand it? Especially if you're in a community like we've seen, over this past week in Oklahoma, completely devastated. You're not going to be rebuilding for months. And in some communities, if it's a really significant event, the Katrina Recovery Office is still open. Katrina was nearly 20 years ago. Northridge earthquake, early 90s. It closed 25 years after the earthquake from a recovery standpoint. And yes, we're very fortunate in the United States where we have processes in place where businesses can, a small business can ask the SBA for a disaster loan, low interest rate. But if you know, all of you as small business owners, you know, the time from when you suffer a loss to when you get that money, it's that gap we're talking about that can be significant. That $10,000 can be everything to a small business. You can't withstand a week maybe without $10,000. It's all relative and what you have in place. All right, so let's start a little bit. What can we do about this? You can't stop Mother Nature from coming with the tornadoes, and we've heard that the National Weather Service says we're going to have a very active hurricane season. You're going to wake up tomorrow, there'll be another cyber hack. It's overwhelming, right? You just sometimes don't want to get out of bed. So what can you do about it? And I want to, if there's one thing I want you to walk away with today, is you are confident that you can handle this. You're a small business owner. You are the bravest person I have met. This is not for the faint of heart. I thought, being the head of senior director of global emergency management for the world's largest corporation, I thought, I was a pretty tough person. No, this has been the most challenging thing I've done in my life. And why is it so challenging? Because you're walking on quicksand and you don't know a lot of times how you're going to get to tomorrow. So let's take the bull by the horns. First step, you need to understand your risks. What is it that you have to be worried about? If you are in, somewhere in the Midwest, probably, an earthquake, unless you're over by the New Madrid Fault, is probably not on your high list as far as risk. Tornadoes are. I'm a transplant from California living in the Midwest. I didn't have to deal with tornadoes. Ready to go with earthquakes. Tornadoes was a whole new thing for me to learn. And even with all my years of doing this type of work, I was petrified when I first got the first warning about it. And like, what am I going to do? And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to have an answer for this. But take a pause. Think about what do you need to worry about? Like that is your top risk. And then on my next slide, I'm going to show you a little matrix that you'll get and hopefully that you can fill in and quickly kind of think this through. And then estimate the impact. It's great to know all the bad things that you might experience, but if it's not going to be a big impact to you, then you put it in the category, I'm not going to worry about that. You need to worry about what's going to be the highest impact to you and your highest threats. Then let's take a look at probability. Now, most likely at some point, there's going to be an alien invasion, but what's the probability of that? Do we want to waste our precious time thinking about that? Or what about the solar flares? That they're going to impact all of our technology. Indeed risks. These are indeed risks. But you really need to have that critical eye of what is going to knock your business down. And what is that probability? And then we're going to, calculate your risk score. And I'm not asking you to do a lot of math. It is just to truly look at like, okay, this could happen, but it's really not going to have a big impact on me. And it's probably, the possibility of happening is not great. So my risk is going to be low on that. And then I can prioritize. Where I want to invest some time and money. And you now have awareness and have that confidence of like, hey, I've done this. And in 10 minutes, you can have a nice little one sheet that says, whew, I can exhale. I'm in Nevada. I'm not going to have a hurricane. I don't need to think about that. I'm okay. So you can in your brain be able to focus where you need to focus the most and what's most important for your business. And always, what's your number one asset? Your employees, taking care of them. here's my risk matrix for you and how I want you, I'm going to give you a little homework that I want you to take this and hopefully sometime this next week, you sit down and really think about your business and how, taking it from that low impact and what we usually consider as, oh, sorry, I forgot my own poll. Okay. So take the quick poll. My employees know what to do if our business operations are disrupted. And see, even had my own like cue about employees. So is the answer yes? Is it no? And is going back to bed the correct answer? Because I know how that feels, that you just want to like, I am so overwhelmed right now, I can't do this. All right, take a minute. All right. Let's see how we're feeling. Hey, I love that this is kind of split down the middle. That your employees know what to do. That's fantastic. That's great. Those with the no and going back to bed, I hear you. And this is why I want to give you this risk assessment and this matrix. And I'm giving you a little homework to go through this. Because when you've done this exercise, what's your next step? Is communicating this to your employees so they understand what they're supposed to do. And really be serious about this. Think hard about it. If it's going to be a loss less than $1,000 and $1,000 to you is not going to be, huge impact, then it's going to be low impact to you. And then also on that left side, let's look at that likelihood, going from improbable to likely. And I put some definition there. So you can kind of, think about this. This is designed to be flexible. So you make it relevant to you. If a loss of $1,000 actually is a big deal for you, then let's tweak that. Let's make that a number that isn't a big deal. Under 500, 20 bucks, whatever it is. There's no judgment on this. This has to be effective for you. And then let's move on over, going from that moderate impact and typical, again, I put some typical definitions from 2,000 to 5,000 and being out, an outage. And think about this, 5 days. 5 days, you can't do work. Is that a big deal to you? Or is it a moderate impact? And then also taking it all to the end over there to where we're extreme. And, and where do you, just looking at this, where do you want to focus? You want to be over here in this red. That's when we start our planning, we're starting over here. Because those are the most likely, the most impactful that could shut down our business operations. And so some resources that I wanted to give you, because you may not know what's in your backyard. I mean, you might know the big one, like if Southern California, it's an earthquake, maybe wildfires, but you may not know all of your risks. So I wanted to give you some different data points so you can do a little research about your area. The FEMA's National Risk Index, that's the map that I'm showing you. You can put in your zip code and it will pop up with, very likely the risk index legend you can see there in the middle of the page and kind of give you a rating of telling you like what you should be thinking about. A couple other ones I thought that are really helpful for me, knowing your community's crime and looking at the FBI crime data explorer. Again, you can put in your zip code and kind of get the reports. Only thing about the FBI report, it's about a year out of date, so it's not live. So knowing a lot of local police departments will also post crime statistics, so check those out too. Just to know your neighborhood, because that's a risk too to your operation. There could be a terrible thing that happens in your neighborhood, and local law enforcement closes it down. Knowing, also from. Like if you're going to have a big event, if your town's hosting something, like the Super Bowl or World Cup, and you're a tiny little coffee shop, might be a great problem to have that you're going to have all this increased business. Or what if they're shutting the road that's right in front of you for this event? Know these special events, because those can really sideline your business, and that becomes a crisis. So it's not defined like when you think of disaster or crisis, but it can become. So know that too, if there's any special events. And then I signed up for CISAs. They're the federal entity that's responsible for more of the information technology or cyber risks. They have, advisories that they push out, and you can sign up for their emails, and that can just let you know what they're monitoring, what they're seeing. A lot of times, it's already happened, but it can tell you if you're experiencing something weird, that it'll tell you like the tips and who to contact if something's happening with any of your technology. So another really good resource to have, because the backbone of my business, I'm completely virtual. My team is across the United States. If we lost Zoom, my backup obviously like Teams, but what if there was something going on with all, of those types of technologies? How am I communicating? How am I doing my business and thinking that through? And it's nice to have kind of a heads up when something like that's going on. Okay, you now know your risks. You have your little matrix. What are you going to do about it? You're going to sit there and you're going to like, okay, my biggest risks is, we have been experiencing. I'm next to a college campus, and we've been experiencing protests, and that's been starting to impact us both from maybe law enforcement presence, shutting down access, egress and ingress to your location, or more customers coming in. So that's my biggest risk right now. So I need to write a plan. You do not need to sit and write a huge document and use all the jargon. There are resources for you. You can do that if you'd like to do that. But what is most important is thinking through the process. You want to think through your concept of operations. And what does that mean? Concept of operations. All that means is, how do you keep your business going if something happens? Okay, let's go back to my protest example. You're next to a college campus, you have encampments, you have law enforcement, they're blocking off egress and ingress getting in. Okay, what do we do? You have 3 employees. Okay, what do I need to think about? I need to think about my safety of my employees. So I'm going to talk to law enforcement and say, hey, I'm the small business over here. I'd like to stay open. How best can I do this? 2, okay, everything's blocked off. I can't stay in business. Is there a way I can pivot to like serving in a different location, put up a little kiosk, or do I need to close down? And when we think about concept of operations, that's what we're talking about, is really looking at the full up, down, all around of this scenario on how this is going to impact my business. And if you have a team of folks, and I'm so happy to see half of you guys, your folks know what to do, make sure they know. If those employees in my coffee shop example with the college protests, that you had said, hey, the local police let me know that they're heating up, or they're going to move encampments today. I'm going to text you and I'm going to tell you, hey, don't come in, or I'm going to tell you to come in this way. So thinking that through, and then making sure that your teams know what they're supposed to do. If you have the time, thinking through all those risks that you put on your risk map, and having like an annex that's drawn up for them. Like, what's our earthquake plans? What's our tornado plans? What's our cyber hack plans? What if we can't get into our payroll system? How are we paying people? So thinking those through, and this does not need to be elaborate. It could seriously be just asking yourself the question, what do we do in a cyber hack? And writing down the answer. That can be your plan. And thinking about some other kind of details, if you want to do very broad on how it doesn't really matter what the hazard, and look at it from, what do we need to do if we evacuate? What if we have to shelter in place, stay here, go into lockdown? So think active assailants situation, someone, either active shooter or someone with a knife that comes into your location. And I know these are tough subjects to think through, but think through them before they happen. And I hate that it's a reality to have to talk through this, but you're so better served if you yourself are mentally prepared for a potential, and as opposed to just having no plans. And so if you have to go into lockdown, and then thinking through your crisis communications, and that could be very simple. How am I talking to my folks? How am I talking to my family? Because if the moment this is tweeted out, and everybody knows there's an active shooter in your neighborhood, everybody is going to want to know if you're okay and your employees are, if they're okay. So thinking through from a calm standpoint too. And then continuity operations. How do you get back to work? If something happens, you got a flood in your coffee shop, clean it up. How do you get back to work? How are you doing damage assessments? Can you open up another little location? Can you have a little kiosk? How do you get yourself back? And then once you've thought all this through, you want to do some training and exercise. But before you get there, I wanted to put some other things for you to consider when you're thinking through your plans. And these are I kind of went through if you were to ask me, like as far as important things to have, an emergency contact list, hands down. You need to know how to communicate to your employees or their loved ones if something happens. So having those at the ready. And don't worry about formats I have to have this in this plan or we have to put it on this drive. It's whatever works for you. If setting up a text group or a Slack group or whatever it is works for you, do that. If you have a private Facebook page, do that. Just what's your protocol? Everybody checks in. After the earthquake, everybody checks in as soon as you can, as soon as it's safe to do. What's your protocol? Just have something. Have some emergency supplies. You got a shelter in place or you got a lockdown situation, have some supplies. When I was with the Walt Disney Company, my role, it was a global role, and it was teaching kind of the company's protocol to all the Disney's different entities. And Disney had a store and actually a big presence in APAC in Sydney, Australia. And there was in a chocolate shop in the same shopping area where the Disney office was, there was an active assailant situation held at gunpoint, at knife point, several individuals in this chocolate shop, and they were in lockdown for 15 hours. They didn't have any supplies on site. They didn't have vending machines. And so, and they were not allowed to evacuate. The local police kept them there. And so it was a huge, unfortunate wake-up call in the heat of a moment of that they needed to have some supplies on site if they got stuck. And then for you, and this is for your operations, if you have kind of senior executives or you have multiple locations, kind of having emergency procedures, just like a flip book around that you can grab and think through, or if your executives, just giving them something quick and easy to think through decisions. Compassionate care is how you're going to deal with any impacted customers or family members in a situation. And I talked a little bit about business continuity, and that's how you get yourself back up and going. Disaster recovery manual. There's a delineation, and sometimes people will combine these two, business continuity and disaster recovery. When you think of disaster recovery, think of IT, all your IT systems. And you may be a small shop like me, that I don't have a server. I don't have like any like real platform on my own. I am heavily reliant on, third-party vendors. So it would be super awesome for me to know, like, what are Zoom's protocol? What's my payroll's protocol if they lose, they have a business disruption, because that's my point of failure, right? If they go down. Other tips that work when you think through planning process, think about insurance, your insurance coverage, and what that covers. Really, it's arduous, but read through that plan to see what they cover and they don't cover. Know your neighbors. Sometimes, especially as a small business and you have a shop, those are your first responders. They're the ones who check up on you and the best, so know them and share resources. And back of your brain, if you were to ask me what I am scared of, it's disinformation. We don't have trusted sources, and with AI coming, things can get made up and become facts within a microsecond. So know your trusted sources where you can get information and be plugged into those communities, especially from a first responder standpoint. And it might be their Twitter page, it might be their Instagram that you're going to go to make sure that you get the information and what's truly going on with the situation. And just kind of thinking through, when you're doing your planning considerations, some of the statistics of those that we've seen from the small businesses is if they've experienced a natural disaster, the likelihood for them to purchase insurance after that, it increases. But then we also see investments made in physical assets, especially if something's been damaged. Supply chain, which has really become huge because we have now, the onion got peeled back on how reliant we are on others for us to do business. And then after experiencing a natural disaster, you see a lot of businesses relocate. All of these are way better scenarios than the FEMA statistic of 40% of small businesses closing their doors. These statistics of staying in business, it increases. FEMA and the American Red Cross have the statistics that showcase, if you thought through and you have a plan, your chances of staying in business 75% higher if you do not have a plan. Here's some planning resources for you. I really like the SBA Small Business Recovery Resilience Guide. Oh, I apologize. This actually comes from the Dr. Lucy Jones Foundation, Southern California folks who know her as the Earthquake Lady. I'm very happy to call her a friend, and I'm on her board. It's a great guidebook. It's got some sciencey stuff in it because she's a scientist. And it has like a fill out tools in this guidebook. Ready.gov for Business is another good resource for any templates that you might need. I like the Insurance Information Institute as well, because they give you both some checklists and some plans, but then also helps you think through the insurance that you might need. My favorite, though, I have to say, was the Small Business Preparedness page, because they really drilled it down. Like, they had a one-sheeter of like, here's everything you need to know, like for like a hurricane, and then had space on there where you could enter information that impacts your company. Look up your local Office of Emergency Management. Sometimes this will be part of the Sheriff's Department, might be part of the Fire Department. They should have community alerts so you can find out, if something's going down. Like if you're going to have flash flooding, tornado warnings, it's all free. Sign up for it, use that tool. And a lot of times those local offices will have free training for businesses. And it starts a network of that local emergency manager knows your name. So who do you think he's telling when something might be going down? You. So start expanding that network. And then check in. Local Chamber of Commerce's and small business offices are really great resources for you as well. All right, last but certainly not least, and one of the most important, you do all this work. You do your risk assessment, you do your planning, you gotta tell people. And I know that the one in the middle about please exit, please evacuate before tweeting, that is actually a real sign. It's not made up. Know your people, know your generations, know that things have slightly changed in how we communicate and how we train people, and make sure that you're incredibly clear in you are speaking to in a language to your different generations that you might be working with on what their role is and what their expectations are, and making sure that, and it does not have to be this big training day exercise, simple things of having a staff meeting, say, hey guys, I want to think through a flash flooding event. How are folks getting to work? Are we getting to work? Where are we getting information? Who do we call? Take 5 minutes. Does not need to be complicated. And just also taking those resources I listed, and here actually on the next page, here's some specific, all free training resources that you can tap into. The Red Cross is Ready rating program is super cool. They'll come out to your business and actually work with you and your employees and do all the training for you and help you get ready and give you a number, and you can put it in your window and connect you up with your local emergency managers. FEMA has the Emergency Management Institute. If you're kind of a little bit of a disaster geek like me, if you really want to delve into it, they have tons of classes, all free. You can get a certificate if you want it. But some of their preparedness, like on how to engage your customers and how to engage your employees, it's really cool tips. And then if from a first responder standpoint, just knowing what to do in different crises, the community emergency response team training, usually housed by your local fire department, all free. And they'll sometimes do it on site for you. And it's a great resource for you. If you're in San Francisco, you have the neighborhood emergency response team. I took that years ago. It's actually predates the CERT. It's an amazing program if you have the time. Ooh, we have a poll. Sorry, I clicked too fast. One last poll for you guys. Okay, so this is, I did assign a little homework. If you have time for one thing, do that risk assessment. But I want you to, after, I know I gave you a lot, tell me one action you're going to take to prepare your business over the next week. Just one. Just one. What are you going to think through? What are you going to, how are you going to help your business? And to me, in one point, I'd like to hit home from you to all of you. Business continuity, emergency preparedness, whatever word you'd like to use, this is business planning. This is being a smart business owner. Because if you don't think through the bad day, the good days can be very, very short-lived. All right, another second. Okay. Woo! Yay! Thank you. List out your critical business functions. That's a great one to pick because you got to know what's important to you, right? And then all these other ones, talking to your employees, doing that call down list, and develop your list of local resources. Thank you all. This is a commitment to yourself. And then right before we get to the Q&A, and you'll get the PowerPoint, but I do have a small business online store that has all these tips and all these guidebooks. And I don't want to talk myself out of money, but that all the resources I gave you are free, and that as you're just starting, I highly recommend them. But you can email me. I'm just info@theresiliencyinitiative.com. All right, so I'm going to take down my slides and stop sharing. And Denise is going to come back on, and we're going to do our Q&A portion. For some reason, I can't stop sharing. I hear you, Denise, and I'm sorry for some. Here we go.
Yep.
There we go.
I'm here. I'm back. I'm back.
Hey.
We are short on time.
Oh, I talked too much. I'm so sorry.
So I don't know that we'll be able to get as many questions in, but I thank you for sharing all the information and all the resources, Andrea. I know you talked a lot about being prepared for physical security. So I just wanted to ask a question to follow up, because we are seeing a lot of cybersecurity, especially you mentioned even AI. There's a lot of social media and even platforms that are used today. Can you also speak a little bit about unforeseen threats with cybersecurity?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Trusted sources, everyone. Watch the websites that you're going to. If you see, like if you're on Facebook or any social media and you see an ad that you like, I highly recommend don't click on that. Go to that website directly and make sure anything, it's got that S, that's the secure HTTPS, that will let you know that your information is secure. But then also, this hygiene for yourself, making sure that you're changing passwords on a frequent basis. And I'm so used to working for big companies. I had an IT department. Now I'm IT. I have to tell my employees to change their passwords because you're all into like using SharePoint site or something like that. So making sure heavy on the awareness, know where you're going, and then sign up for those CISA alerts so you know if any of these scams are going. And unfortunately, it's gotten to a point from on a personal level of picking up the phone, because 9 times out of 10, it's a scammer. And they're doing these terrible things like the express kidnapping, saying that you have a relative that's been kidnapped. Never give them money, they're going to threaten. And it's a very, very scary situation. It actually happened to my dad about my son. But he had the smarts to just like have my mom like call me and say, where's Sean? And everything was okay. But educate yourself on these different scams. That will very much help you, and just take care of your security.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that we're pretty getting close to time, so I want to get one more question in before I turn it back to Colin and even give like a final thought myself. Um, you mentioned Facebook, and I know that a lot of businesses use social media. What are your
Yes.
thoughts on businesses using social media to communicate with their employees, customers, and even the communities, specifically in a crisis situation? And are there risks to that?
It's a great question because I mean, we can't dismiss the impact of social media, and for most businesses, that's how they reach their audience. That's how they communicate, and so you, especially if a crisis is happening to you, you want to do your best to communicate that to your customers, to your employees. And so, if you use a platform on a daily basis to communicate, I recommend using that in a crisis. Not for sharing personal information. I would recommend having another site or chat group or something for your employees so you can check in with them and have an emergency notification system. But to your customers or vendors, definitely use social media. Be aware though, once you put something out into the universe, it can stick. Gone are the days or the press conferences and press releases. You have to be able to share, timely, accurate, and credible information, and you want to be that trusted source of what's impacting you. And so you need to make sure all of your employees and yourself are ready to communicate what is going on with your business and how it's impacting them, and that at what cadence you're going to update individuals when something happens.
Wow, wow. Thank you so much for sharing all these nuggets. I hope everyone was taking notes and ready to get those resources once you share them with us. Thank you again, Andrea, on behalf of BMO. We really appreciate everything that you're doing for entrepreneurs to support the communities. Lastly, I did want to share with all the entrepreneurs that have joined us today that BMO also has a lot of free resources right on our BMO website, starting from things like, a business cash flow, forecasting, a business plan. Please visit our site. Right, we talked about free, especially when you're that smaller and before you even start investing. There's a lot of resources out there for you. And we'd like to, here at BMO, continue to support you through your entrepreneur journey. I'd like to kick it back to Colin now so he can close us off. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Denise and Andrea. What a great presentation. Hopefully everybody feels a little bit more prepared and resilient coming out of that. Thank you all for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed these insights, and we'd love for you to join our upcoming webinars. So you can view those upcoming events by using the link in the chat. And thank you all for joining us today. We look forward to welcoming you all back online soon. Thanks again, everyone, and see you later.